I'm going to use Audition to prepare an audio file for inclusion in a motion graphics project in After Effects. I've got quite a long file, it's maybe 15 minutes long, and I just need to cut out a segment of that around about 60 seconds. The file is a recording from Parliament in 2012, Julia Gillard's misogyny speech. I'm going to take out maybe 60 seconds of some of the more dramatic content in that speech. As I said, I'm working in Audition, and I have sourced the file, an MP3 file, from YouTube. I went to YouTube and found the footage that I wanted, and then I've used a third-party online app, so a browser-based application, to download a YouTube, download an MP3 from that YouTube video. Now, there's many of these services available, and I'm not going to recommend any particular one of them. But if you quickly Google around for YouTube to MP3, you'll find many services where you can copy and paste your YouTube URL and get a downloaded MP3 file. Now, there are some IP intellectual property considerations when doing things such as this. Strictly speaking, you should probably be only downloading videos from YouTube if they're your own property, if you have permission to use that material. If the content is in the public domain, or whether it's copyright free, they're the kind of instances where it'd be best practice to use that material. Nevertheless, I'm going to open up my file here into Audition, and we'll have a look at it. So that's the file that I downloaded. It's an MP3 file. Now, an MP3 file is kind of like the audio version of a JPEG. It's a compressed file. So the computer uses an algorithm to kind of strip out information from the file to keep the file smaller for download. So generally, we don't use MP3 files in production. We're more likely to use an uncompressed file, something like a WAV file, or which is .wav, or an AIF file, which is .aiff. One's a Windows and one's a Mac, kind of. Both are uncompressed file formats. Here's our speech, Julia Gillard's misogyny speech. It's around about 15 minutes long. You can see across here we have our timeline. And in this timeline window, we've got these audio waveforms that kind of represents the frequency of the sound across time. Let's just quickly play a little bit.
I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to oppose the motion.
So as you can see, as I play that file, my timeline indicator moves across the file, and I can hear the sound. We can control the file playback down here. We can move the timeline indicator to any point in the timeline where we want to start. We can use the space bar to quickly start and stop a file. We can navigate around this timeline, zooming in and zooming out, by dragging and dropping these handles here. You can see timeline indicator here, and if I wanted to zoom into that section, I can drag these two handles and get right in close and see that waveform in a lot more detail. When I do that, I can notice all of these breaks in sound. So this is where the voice is at its loudest, I suppose, and these little breaks, the pauses between vocalization. So they're likely to be the places or the points with which we cut or make edits to audio. I can see over here in my kind of document bin that I've got one file open. I can have multiple files open in Audition, which is kind of useful for cutting and pasting and moving across files. What I'm going to do now is actually make the edit. So I've got a 15-minute kind of piece here, and I'm cutting 1 minute of maybe some of the most dramatic content. And that's right at the start, where she tells Tony Abbott that he's going to need to look in a mirror. So let me just play through, and I might find a spot where I'm going to stop.
I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to oppose the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition. And in so doing, I say to the Leader of the Opposition, I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
All right, so somewhere up here, I'm going to just cut out the speaker talking.
I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to oppose the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition. And in so doing, and I rise to oppose. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to oppose the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition. And in so doing, I say to the Leader of...
I'm going to start where she says, I say.
And in so doing, I say to...
So we'll need to get right up close.
So doing, I say... So doing, I say to the Leader of the Opposition... So doing,
That's where she says, I say. So I'm going to select this content to delete. And you see when I've made a selection on the timeline, it's highlighted in white. And then I have these handles that I can drag backwards and forwards. So I'm going to drag this handle all the way back to the start of the file. And if I zoom out, you'll be able to see I've just selected that section right at the start, and I'm going to delete that. So I can just hit delete on the keyboard, or I could go edit, delete. So, and then we can start right where she says
I say to the Leader of the Opposition, I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
Actually, I might make another edit there, because I think I've heard a better point to start.
I say to the Leader of the Opposition, I will not.
Yeah, we're going to start at I will not. I think that's a better spot. So zooming right up, and I can make that selection again from that point. And I've just hit delete on the keyboard to take that out. Let's hear how that starts off.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this.
Ripper. Zooming out at about a minute along.
Repulsive.
She tells Tony Abbott that he's going to need to look in the mirror, and I think it's a really kind of poignant part in the speech.
Resignation. Because if he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. That's what he needs. Let's go through.
He needs a mirror, that's what he needs.
In the House of Representatives, he needs a mirror. That's what he needs.
He needs a mirror. Let's find that point, and we'll edit to that point.
He doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. That's.
You can see that is the break that we need, and I'm going to select from there all the way to the end of the file. I can drag out that little handle all the way to the end and delete that section. So now...
Doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. I will not be lectured.
Great, so two good in and out points. We've got an in point and an out point. Now I could have done that the other way. I could have made a selection of the piece that I wanted and cut that, pasted it into a new document. But what I have now is I've isolated the part of the speech that I want for my production, and I'm going to save this file as an A file to incorporate into After Effects. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to browse to Desktop, and I'm going to call this something appropriate, Edit. I'm going to choose the file format of AIF, or WAV would also be another good choice. And I'll save that to the desktop. Click OK. I'm just going to use the default settings, which are kind of high-res audio settings, or at least pretty reasonable quality. And click OK. So you can see our file's been saved, and I can shut that down, and I'll move over to After Effects and quickly import that file into its own composition. I'll locate it. I'm going to create a composition. Open. So I've brought that audio into After Effects and created a composition that's exactly the right size. So let's have a look. Let's play that composition.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Beautiful, and it finishes off
In the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. I will not be lectured about sex.
Awesome. So let's just have a look at that sound in our timeline. And if I twirl down the waveform, I can actually see the waveform in After Effects. If I wanted to keyframe the volume of that audio sample, I can use our audio levels properties here to keyframe that up and down.